Shifting focus to another global story at this hour. Now, the United States has decided to end all normal trade relations with Moscow in its bid to increase pressure on President Vladimir Putin. Now, the U.S. Congress passed two bipartisan bills on Thursday, all aimed at punishing Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. Now, the first bill was to suspend normal trade relations with Russia, and the second bill was to ban oil, coal and natural gas from it. They now go to U.S. President Joe Biden for his signature. Both parties overwhelmingly supported both the bills, which had languished for weeks in the Senate, as lawmakers worked to hammer out the final details. The legislation, which also applies to Russia's ally Belarus, enables Biden to inflict higher tariffs on various imports, such as steel and aluminium products, further weakening the Russian economy.
Strengthens the sanctions by ensuring that before the ban can be lifted, Russia must meet three clear criteria: withdraws its forces from Ukraine, poses no immediate military threat of aggression to NATO, and recognizes the right of the people of Ukraine to independently freely choose their own government. This is an important bipartisan victory. There is still more we can do and should do.
Now, combined with the sanctions already imposed on Russia, the latest bills will only inflict more economic pain on Moscow. But the sanctions have not spared U.S. consumers, who are already facing the highest inflation in 4 decades, as prices for key commodities like gasoline and wheat increased in the United States. The United States also approved more military weapons to Ukraine worth $100 million. The latest batch includes 12,000 anti-armor systems, 1,400 anti-aircraft systems, over 50 million rounds of ammunition, 45,000 sets of body armor and helmets. It also includes hundreds of suicide drones. The U.S. has so far pledged $1.7 billion worth of support to Ukraine. Now, staying on with this story, right after the United Nations suspended Russia from its human rights body, NATO has now announced military support to Ukraine, after repeatedly refusing to send troops, weapons, or even imposing a no-fly zone. The Western military alliance has finally agreed to step U.S. support for Ukraine, with possibly more powerful offensive weapons. Individual NATO member countries have been providing anti-aircraft and anti-tank weapons, as well as equipment and medical supplies. But after the summit, the army supply will be a more unified decision with more than just defensive weapons. When asked by a reporter if NATO was supplying defensive or offensive weapons, Stoltenberg said that he would prefer not to give details yet, but he clarified that NATO members will supply many kinds of arms and will do more. Listen in.
We agreed that we must further strengthen and sustain our support to Ukraine so that Ukraine prevails in the face of Russia's invasion. And of course they need different types of weapons. And allies are providing them with different types of weapons, and we see the impact of these weapons on the battleground every day, because the Ukrainians have been able to inflict severe losses on the invading Russian forces.
Ukraine has further demanded the West for an oil and gas embargo on Russia. The foreign minister, Dmitry Kuleba, said that Ukraine will continue to push the West to ban all Russian energy products and de-SWIFT Russian banks. Listen in.
We will continue to insist on full oil and gas embargo for Russia, on de-SWIFTing all Russian banks, on making sure that all ports are closed for Russian vessels and Russian goods, with the minimal number of exemptions from it based on humanitarian grounds. And I call on all allies to put aside their hesitations, their reluctance to provide Ukraine with everything it needs. Because, as weird as it may sound, but today weapons serve the purpose of peace.
Meanwhile, Finland is all up for a rapid membership to the NATO. The country has a 1,300 kilometers long border with Russia. After the NATO summit in Brussels, the Finnish foreign minister has announced that majority of the country's population are in support of a NATO membership, and the parliament is expected to debate on the matter in the coming few weeks.
Well, our process is quite rapid. First of all, we can say that common opinion has changed very rapidly since the Russian attack against Ukraine. In 3-4 weeks, the clear majority, first time ever from the Finnish population, is supporting for the NATO membership, and the government will give this white paper on security to the parliament on the Easter week, and then of course we'll leave the debate time for the parliament.
And up on the northernmost polar region of the earth, the sound of gunfire has started echoing as a row of Swedish and Finnish soldiers train rifles and missile launchers on nearby hills. This marks the first time forces from Finland and Sweden have formed a combined brigade in a scheduled NATO exercise in Arctic Norway known as Cold Response. Neither countries are a member of the NATO alliance. The exercise was long planned, but Russia's invasion of Ukraine has added intensity to the war game.